This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Still waiting in line? Again? That's time you'll never get back. Save time and money with Stamps.com. Over 4 million businesses have skipped the line with Stamps.com. Join them to save up to 90% off carrier rates from your computer or phone right now. Print postage for certified mail, registered mail, and packages in seconds. Then schedule a pickup right from your home or office. For a limited time, go to Stamps.com and use code PODCAST for a free welcome gift. Taxes and fees apply.
A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 31.
Welcome to a Swift Kick in the Ass podcast, hosted by lifelong friends Tom Stewart and John Curren. Today's episode is a special feature covering Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart. I'm joined with my lifelong friend John Curren, and this is another episode of a Swift Kick in the Ass podcast talking about Robert Greene's best-selling book, The 48 Laws of Power. Law 18,
do not build is a dangerous place.
Yeah, do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation's dangerous. The world is a dangerous place and enemies are everywhere. Everyone has to protect themselves. A fortress seems the safest, but isolation exposes you to more dangers than it protects you from. It cuts you off from valuable information and makes you conspicuous and an easy target. Better to circulate among people, find allies, and mingle. You are shielded from your enemies by the crowd.
Yeah, I can't disagree. The world is definitely a dangerous place, and I can remember my mom talking to me when I was a kid, probably in high school, saying that there was safety in numbers. Always go out in the crowd. She felt much safer with me going out with other people. Little did she know how much trouble I was getting in with the crowd. So watch your crowd. But I think this is more than just physical safety. True, we can build a wall around, a physical barrier around ourselves, like a fortress. When you're in the military, militaries have fortresses, and there are plenty of stories within this chapter, within this law about what happens when people lock themselves in. I mean, look at Ted Kaczynski. I mean, he was just by himself. Isolation can make perverted thoughts, put all these thoughts in your head. In fact, I remember when I drove out to Colorado and I spent about 3 months there by myself, I read a book called Solitude. And it was a great book to read when you're alone because it puts all these, great, I'm being sarcastic, but it said in that book that oftentimes when you are alone and you're in solitude, that most people will have thoughts of suicide, and you begin to wonder if anyone would ever even care if you were gone when you're isolated and you're alone. So that's one aspect of this law. But I think that we can build barriers around our hearts, and I think we can build barriers around our minds. Look at our environment these days. Many of us will not discuss politics with our fellow Americans because there are so many different hot topic issues that you're afraid to get your ass beat if you bring up say the wrong thing to the wrong person.
That's true. I was at a party just last weekend and someone started talking and they said, nope, I'm speaking politics. I'm going to stop, forget everything I said. I promised myself I wouldn't do that because people know that, when you talk politics and religion, people do not agree.
Yeah. And then, it's more though than just not agreeing. I think we can have an intelligent conversation and agree to disagree. We all have our own opinions, and as long as we're respectful of that, I think that works out fine if you're dealing with two people who are emotionally able to discuss politics and discuss different ways of thinking.
Now, what if it's on Facebook? Because every time an election comes around, all your friends start posting their viewpoints, and that's almost like broadcasting where you don't really chime in. I guess you can answer back, but I get so overwhelmed with so many different, political viewpoints that I just kind of like shut down and don't even go on Facebook during the elections.
I think a lot of people do that. I agree. You do get overwhelmed. You don't really know what to believe. And also, I think that when you speak your mind and you are opinionated, I speak from my own example. People will distance themselves from you because you think differently than they do.
And you know what I do?
No one really wants.
I go into isolation.
You go into isolation. The book talks about that, and it said that isolation is a good thing. If you need to get away, and we all do need to get away from time to time, that can be healthy on a temporary basis. But for long-term and extended periods of time, you can really do yourself a lot of harm. Again, look at Ted Kaczynski. Look at a lot of the serial killers. They were very isolated.
You know what else? What society. I really when I was reading this law, what I really thought about was addiction, because that's one of the big things in addiction is they tell the individual not to isolate themselves. And that's what happens in addiction. They usually become very reclusive, and they fall in deeper within their own mind, and it's not healthy for them.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. As I was reading the law, I was thinking about whenever I go through very difficult times, or when I have gone through difficult times, I tend to isolate myself. I tend to withdraw. I also, I guess that applies to when I was single and I had a new girlfriend. I isolated myself. I withdrew from my friends, and my friends always knew when I had a new girlfriend, because I wasn't, calling them. I wasn't coming over to, hang out. I wasn't going out. Wasn't being sociable.
And I think that's quite common. I mean, I've done the same thing. And then when you break up with that girlfriend, all of a sudden you're like, "Hey guys, you want to go out?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, all right. What is
what happened?
She not busy? Is she busy tonight, or
But outside of having a girlfriend to take your time, I think that when we go through rough times, we don't necessarily want to be a burden, and we don't want to tell our friends that we're going through a rough time, because it may make us appear weak or vulnerable, or maybe we made a really bad mistake and we're ashamed of ourselves for putting ourselves in that situation. But what I've learned over the years is that our friends, our true friends, are going to stick by you regardless of the situation that you're in. And when you're going through a rough time, that's when you really need your friends the most.
Absolutely.
And it's difficult. It's difficult to put that in action, but I think it's very important. And we're not talking about going on vacation and putting the cell phone or the smartphone or the laptop or the tablet or whatever you're using to access Facebook and other social media. I think it's good to kind of cut the switch, drop everything, go offline, and unplug. I think that's healthy.
I've seen this in the corporate world, and I've seen it when I had a boss that he fell out of favor with the general manager, and they stopped inviting him to department head meetings. He stopped interacting with his coworkers, so he didn't really know what was going on, and he could not stop any kind of actions that were going on to sabotage his job. And eventually they got rid of him. Which is scary, but he fell out of he like, you don't go out in the field if you're a police officer and you're not out in the field all the time dealing with the people day in and day out, and you end up getting a better job, and you're sitting behind a desk and you get kind of a little fat around the gut and a little lazy. You're not as sharp as you used to be, and I think it's the same thing, because you're isolating yourself from where you need to be.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, you talked about the corporate environment, and I agree with you. I think when you're on the way out, when you're being pushed out, people do tend to isolate you. But think about the executives up in corporate America. They call it the ivory tower. You know, they're up, they're above everybody else, and they too are isolated. They're cut off from information from people in the rank and file doing the work, and really that creates a great disconnect between upper management and the worker bee.
I agree. You know, this law kind of, it doesn't conflict necessarily to what was it, law 16 that we did here recently about absence, right?
No, I don't. Yeah, no, I don't think it. I don't think it overlaps really all that much. I think we're talking about something quite different. It's in the. I mean, there are reasons to get away. I mean, let's just face it. We are packed in like sardines. If you live in a city, people are around us everywhere we go. We never get a chance really to be by ourselves. I mean, as a father of three, gosh, you know, I cherish the moments that I can just sit out on my screened-in porch and drink my coffee just by myself and hear the birds chirping and the silence. I love it. It's healthy for me. But I don't get a chance to do that very often, and you know, and then we're plugged in all the time as well. So there's never really any disconnect for most of us these days. But there was an interesting part of this book that I'm try not to paraphrase it, but this comes directly from the book about the only thing that, let me read this, about the only thing that constant human contact cannot facilitate is thought. But think about that for a minute. You know, when you're in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, you're just trying to survive, man. You're not really giving a lot of things deep thought. And it's not until you back away from whatever you're doing and take that vacation, or, you know, go on a long walk by yourself, that that your mind is allowed to kind of open up, and you gain new perspective.
You know, I understand that because, you know, I always complain about my commute, but the one positive side of it is it gives me an hour and a half every morning and an hour and a half on the way home to think. And sometimes I won't answer my phone. I won't turn on the radio. I'll just sit in dead quiet. And sometimes I'm creating inside my mind or coming up with ideas, or other times I'm just reflecting on, you know, what's going on in my life. And it's almost like a time of meditation because I'm moving, I'm doing something. Even though I'm sitting in a vehicle, I'm moving. And it's a feeling, it's that state of flow. I mean, you could drive a couple miles and you don't even realize that, you know, you're like, man, I didn't feel like I was paying attention to the road, but you were. And it's the same thing if you're an athlete and you're training and you get in that, what they call flow, and you don't realize that the time passes different and you perceive time different, but it gives you a chance to let go of everything, where you're not thinking about anything but, you know, what's important to you, like a state of meditation, Roy.
Yeah, I had just the opposite experience when I lived in Atlanta, and I was commuting 28 miles one way, and it would take me, you know, hours. It'd take me a solid hour and a half in the morning, and in the afternoon, I actually had to break it up because it was horrendous. I found I would listen, you know, I would listen to NPR. Back then, this is 15 years ago, weren't, you know, podcasts. So it was a much different environment. I was just pissed off all the time.
Yeah, no, I understand that happens to me a lot, but I do find times when I'm either moving through traffic or I just totally forget about the traffic, and I think of what's going on in my mind, and I just go on autopilot. My body just responds. You know, if there's anything I'm a master of, it's driving through traffic, because I've done so much of it. I can do it without thinking, and, you know, I'm a safe driver, but I just react. And I think it's something that I would miss, or I have missed, because I actually had that commute, went to another job that was only a couple miles away from my house. And I didn't have the time listening to podcasts. I didn't have the time to think. And I missed that time. When I went back to my current job now, where I have a 27-mile commute through traffic and it takes an hour and a half to get there, I gripe about it, but there is a silver lining to that cloud.
Yeah, and I too, I mean, I work from home, so I don't have a commute at all. And I do have to say that I do miss having that time by myself. I mean,
let me ask you something. Have you seen the movie Wild?
I've seen Into the Wild.
No. This is a movie. This is it's probably, you think, oh, it's this chick flick. I'm not really going to check it out. But I was watching it with my wife, and it's really good. It's basically this girl. She was hooked on heroin. Her mother had just died. She was full of anger. She was a sex addict, and just everything. She had just gone through a divorce because, or separation, I think, because she cheated so much on her husband because she was a sex addict that, he was like, I just can't be with you. And, so she was walking into basically this outdoor supply place to buy a shovel to dig herself out of the snow because she had, got snowed in, and she saw a book about traveling. I forget what the name of the trail, but it basically goes from Mexico up to the, to Canada, around that region. And, part of it's through desert, part of it's through the mountains. And she was just like, I'm going to do this. And she didn't know anything about hiking. She packed this like 80-pound backpack that she called Monster because it was just, she overpacked, it was the first time doing it. So she brought everything, but she also forgot things. But she said that the first 8 days she had no human contact. And she was like, I saw her earlier today. She was on Oprah, and she was talking to Oprah, and she was like, have you ever had 8 days where you never talked to anyone and didn't have a radio? You didn't listen to anything? And Oprah was like, no. And she was like, it was very liberating. It was very, very freeing. But anyways, she goes through this whole hike, and, she ends up making it, and it changes her life.
So what you're saying is that you watch chick flicks with your wife and Oprah as well.
Yeah. No,
Turn in your man card.
Yeah, I know that sounded a little bad when I said Oprah or the O channel or whatever it is. I wasn't watching it. It just happened to be on when I was sitting there with my computer and my wife was watching it. But I saw that movie, so I paid attention to what the girl was saying, and it was very interesting.
That was Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
Wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah. She played the part. Yes.
Yeah. No, that gets me interested.
Yeah.
In watching it. I mean,
she gets a little gnarly at the end because she's been on the trail for so long, but
hey, that's okay. I would check that out, and I agree. So we're not really just talking about physical isolation. We are talking about, isolating our minds, isolating our hearts, and we're talking about, really the absence of fear in our lives, living openly with everybody else, and not being afraid. I think that really plays into this law as well, because it says that you're more safe out in the open. You're less conspicuous. You're able to blend in with everybody else. So you're not as much of a target as if you're in a fort where people want to attack, or they can see you, and it's a challenge to get over those walls.
Yeah, they could siege a stationary fortress. So yeah, in the book they definitely talked about how dangerous it is to, even if you build walls, it could become your actual prison because people can confine you in that structure. They also talked about one of the guys that unified China. He was I guess a warlord that became an emperor, but he was so fearful that he started, no one would know what room he stayed in, almost like the president. He had kind of like this secret service where only a few guys knew where he was at any time, and he would never sleep in the same room twice. People never saw him in public, but he isolated himself, so the public never They didn't know him. He went from being this courageous warlord and a badass to being like, where is this guy? Does he even exist? Kind of like Castro, has become. Castro's just kind of like faded away. You're like, did he really die? Is he still kicking, or is he like, are these his he has a lookalike, or is that an animatronic that he had Disney build, back in the 50s?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as humans, we are social creatures. We need each other, and that's just part of who we are, and we need to recognize that. Let's see. I think that's about it. I mean, we don't want to start building a wall around ourselves as well.
Sounds good. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to A Swift Kick in the Ass podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's content, and we ask you to please leave us a review in iTunes. Also, head over to aswiftkickingtheass.com to get a free copy of the Simple Spending Tool.
This summer, turn your gifting game up during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, you can score up to 30% off succulents, bonsais, fresh-cut blooms, and more. Whether you're celebrating a birthday, sending a thank you, or a just because surprise, 1-800-Flowers lets you save big on a stunning selection of gifts. Save up to 30% off during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. Gift something unforgettable today.
When was the last time you felt in control of your business finances? Expenses tracked, invoices sent, taxes ready. That's where Found comes in. Found brings your banking, bookkeeping, invoicing, and taxes together in one simple app. Manage expenses, invoice clients, send payments, and prep for tax time right where you bank. Join the hundreds of thousands who have already streamlined their finances with Found. Open a Found account for free at found.com. That's FOUND.com. Found is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Lead Bank, member FDIC.